Hello, and welcome back to Use Code Jam's online bits and bytes lesson. Today we're going to do a Python activity called Count by 2, and this activity is recommended for students in grades 6 through 12. So before we get too into that, I do want to go over a couple things about next week's lesson schedule. So if we go to our website, usecodejam.org, and if you go under the Jam at Home tab, you'll go to Bits and Bytes Online, which is where you downloaded today's activity sheet if you've done that. And you'll see a couple changes to the top. So starting July 6th, for 2 weeks, we're going to run a new program. It's part of Bits and Bytes, but it's a more focused program. It's called Puzzle Club. And during these 2 weeks, on Monday and Wednesdays, lessons will be posted after the live session. So what that means is that instead of going with the activity being posted Monday and Wednesday morning and holding a live session Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, everything's going to happen 2 days a week. So the first lesson will go live on Monday, July 6th at 4 p.m. So that means that at 4 p.m. we'll host a live session via Zoom and go over the activity as a group. If we don't finish that activity, then there will be a pre-recorded video and any helpful activity sheets available on this website after our live session. So after 5 p.m., the video and the activity sheets will be available, but not until we have the live session. This is our hope. We think this will clarify some things and maybe make these a little bit more fun. But the Puzzle Club in particular will focus on, well, exactly what it says, solving different types of puzzles that kids may encounter either in class or outside of class. So it's not like the physical pieces puzzle, but different kinds of teaching them more of how to approach things with a logical solution, even if they don't really know how or what the answer is going to be. So other than that, everything will remain the same. The latest activity, including the Puzzle Club activities after the live sessions, will be posted here. Any related materials will be posted below it. The great thing about the Puzzle Club is that you're not going to have to worry too much about tech requirements. So you won't need to worry if you're doing the Zoom call on a phone or a tablet or a computer. It will all work from that. And that's pretty much the big thing. So this will be updated, but as usual, you can choose to join us for the live sessions by clicking this button, and they're all already on our active page. So you can go ahead and add those whenever you want. These are still free. We're just kind of adding some variety to our activities. So I'm really excited about that. And past activities will still be available below. All right, so with that out of the way, I'm going to pull up our activity sheet, which, like I said, will be available here. And today's lesson is called Count by 2. So a very common assignment you'll get when you start taking coding lessons will deal with iterating and counting. So iterating is going over some data multiple times in order to match or find something. So in this situation, we're going to build a program that accepts a user number and then we'll count by evens to that number and then odds to that number. And what's different about this one than ones we've done in the past is we're going to introduce functions. So functions are a reusable piece of code where everything inside is related to one function. So we'll have count by evens because everything in there is going to help us count by evens to our given number, and then we'll have count by odds because everything in there is going to be will help us count by odds. We're also going to include a main function. So the main function is kind of the driver of any program regardless of the language, at least as far as I'm aware. So the main function is where you call other sub-functions or you get user data in there. You can even create a function that goes to get the user data. For this one we don't, we just have 3. But that helps to make your code cleaner and more concise and easier to edit, because if you need to go edit the count by evens function, you just go straight there and you make the change and you don't have to sort through your program, especially if you want to call a function multiple times. So we're only calling these functions once in our program, but if we wanted to take in multiple numbers, we would have to call count by even. We could call count by evens multiple times, or we could find another way to do that. But we'll show more of this in an example as we get into it. So we're going to use the free online software Replit. And so it's already in my browser, it's a history. So you go to repl.it/languages/Python3. And it's going to take us to this page. The reason we use this one is that it's pretty good with, we do fairly basic coding. You also have the ability on the side here, you can add multiple files and kind of work with them together, which is another thing that you'll do with more advanced programming than what we'll do here. But it's helpful to know which tools do that. Not every tool online does that. Some IDEs, you only have one workspace. Replit is really good because it lets you have multiple workspaces. So we're working in main.py. And the first thing we're going to do is declare our function. So we're going to do this with a define keyword, and it's just typed like that, def count underscore by evens semicolon. So let's take a minute to look at, oops, I forgot number, and it changed that to evens. It doesn't like evens, that's okay. So let's talk about syntax for just a minute. So like I said, we use the define keyword here, def, that tells it that we're creating a function, and this semicolon at the end says that we're going to have an indent, and everything inside of here is going to line up with that indent or be indented more depending on what we do. And that is all part of the function. If I were to line up this line with the D, where my cursor is right there, then I would basically have an empty function. It wouldn't accept anything else from underneath that. And I'll illustrate that in just a minute for you to see. So that's the definition, the colon, and then here, count by evens. So in Java and C, you use something called camel case for the most part for naming your functions and naming your variables, and that would be something like this, where it starts with a lowercase c for count, and then you have uppercase b for by, and then uppercase e for evens, no spaces. That's typical coding practice for Java and C. Python, you use what's called this snake case here, and that has underscores between the words, and it's all lowercase. Now, there's usually not going to be a law that says this is what you have to do, but this is just standard practice and what people expect to see. But if you start working in a professional environment, they may have their own standards that they follow. So just know the basics and be flexible on what other environments are doing, because it's all personal taste at the end of the day. So our second step is we're going to add a statement, and here I'll show you the indenting stuff that I was talking about. So I think my indent got a little messed up. I'm going to fix it, and I'm going to type in I equals 0 and do enter. So if you remember Java and C, you have to do semicolons at the end of the line. You don't have to do that in Python, and enter will do it. And then we're going to do print count by evens, and the reason we're doing that is because if you so like, you don't normally see the code when you run a program. You normally see the output. So we need to practice programming as if we're the end user, which means that we need to know what's going on in the program. So that we're telling the function that, hey, when we print count by evens, we're telling the user, we're about to count by evens, and what's following is related to that function, so that they know what's going on. If it just started printing a bunch of numbers, they could probably figure it out, but some users might be confused, especially if they haven't used the program before. When you write a program that requires user interaction, which will be most of them, you need to write it with the intention that a human is going to use it at some point, and it's not a computer. And you can't write it in a way that an expert would get it without needing any explanation. It's better to include more explanation than less. So going on to step 3, we're going to do our while loop now. And you'll see some more indents. So you can see this line with the indent. If I had the I here, and I tried to run the program, I'm going to get an error. It expected an indent on that block, and it should. So we're going to come back here and fix that, and now I'm going to start my while loop. So I have while I is less than or equal to my num. And the reason we do less than or equal is because we want it to print the number if we reach it. So if we enter an even number like 4, we want 4 to print. If you just did less than, it would print up to 4, until it would print up to I equaling 4, but it wouldn't print 4 out. So that's why the equal sign is there. And the reason I here, I forgot to mention, this is called our counter variable. So we're going to start it at 0 and increase it by 1 each loop through, each time through our while loop here. So now we have our while loop set up. We're going to use this if statement, and this will test if it's even. So we're going to type if number modulus by 2 modulo, I'm not actually sure if that is equal to 0. Add the colon at the end and hit enter. So what's happening here is we're dividing our number by 2 and trying to find out what the remainder is. So if we were just dividing, we would use the regular backslash like that, and we would get what the whole number is. So if you did 4 divided by 2, you would get 2. But here we're using the modulus operator. And what that does, like I said, is it returns the remainder. So the remainder of 4 divided by 2 is 0. There's nothing left over. It's a smooth, clean, even division. You don't have any remainder. If I did 5 divided by 2, I would have, hold on, math, I would have 1 left over, because it wouldn't take the whole, it wouldn't take that half. Even though that would be 2.5 in regular math, there's still that 1 left over because we're only dividing integers, not decimal points or fractions. So if it's 0, we have an even number, and we're going to print I, and then we're going to, whoops, that was a 1, and then we're going to increase I by 1, and that's the end of our while loop. Oops, sorry, that should be, this I plus or equals 1 should align with the if up here, because we want to do that regardless of if we print the number or not. So it's outside of that if statement. Right, so our next step is going to be pretty similar to this. We're going to create our count by odds function, but let's go over this real quick. So we have our counter starting at 0. We're going to tell the user we're going to count by evens of whatever number they entered, and while our counter is less than or equal to num, we're going to test each one by dividing it by 2 to find the remainder. Print the number if it's even, increase the I by 1 no matter what. So the first time will be 0. 0 divided by 2 is 0, so it will print 0. And then we'll increase to 1. So on the 1 divided by 2 is still 2, I think. I can't remember math. It's been a while. But let's go with 5. 5 divided by 2 is 1. So it won't print that because it's not equal to 0, and it will just skip and increase to 2. So because the count by odds function is going to be really similar, we're going to save some time and copy and paste this. And I'm going to leave a blank line between my functions. And the first thing I'm going to do is change the count by evens to count by odds. And then same in my print statement here, I'm going to count by odd. I don't think we need to change too much of here. And then we're just going to change, instead of equals to 0, we're going to do not equals to 0. That's what the exclamation point is. Let's double check. Count by odds. Yep. Okay. So that's all good. So maybe you notice, and if you're new, that's okay. So in programming, we use the double equals for if we're comparing if a number is equals or a value is equals to another one. So like if this was 0 divided by 2, it would still be 0, so 0 equals 0. We use the single equal sign as a assignment operator. So that means we are assigning the value of 0 to I. We are not, it's essentially in your brains, it's going to come across of I equals 0 here. But what we're really doing is we're assigning the value of 0 to I. And when we increase that value here, we are increasing the current value of I by 1. So that's why it gets to 1. It's a little different than how maybe you've approached these things before, but it's okay. And if you still think of this as equals, it won't hurt you unless you're on a test and you confuse yourself. But when you're comparing, you use the double operator here. And then when you come down here, this is our not operator. So if you put that in front of just about any symbol that we use, or mathematical operator at least, it will negate it. So we're saying this is not equal to 0. So if we have 1 divided by 2, it is not equal to 0, and that's true, so we'll print the number. Okay, so we have those two done, and like I said before, we're going to do a main function here. So we're just going to declare it like normal, def main. We're not going to send any values through, so we don't have any parameters for main this time, but you could. You could take in input from the keyboard in your main function that uses the systems library. But we're not going to do that. We're going to take that in our main. So in our main, we're going to add num is equal to int, and this is a cast function, and inside that cast function we're going to use the input function and ask the user to enter a number. I think it's just enter a number. Yep. And you can see that it auto completed all of our open and close parentheses and open and close quotations for us. So like I said, this is our input function. It allows us to accept input from the keyboard. And then the int function converts it from a string to a number. So every time you input something from the keyboard, the program sees it as a string. In fact, anything you do in Python automatically defaults to a string value. So if you do math, you don't necessarily have to declare it that it is an integer. It will usually kind of figure that out for you. Python's a lot more efficient in some ways than other languages. But it could also cause you problems if you're trying to print things out. You'll get errors if you try to print a number within a string, which we've done in other activities that I think will go up online soon. So that's why we have int, so that we can treat it like a number without causing any issues here. So even though I have hard-coded these, because number is an integer, it will treat everything like an integer. Okay. So next we're going to call our count by evens, and we're going to send the num value down, and we're going to print a blank space again, so that it's easy for the end user to see the difference. And then count by odds. You can see the autofill here. You're fine to use that if you don't want to type. And then we're passing the number here. And that's it for the main. And this last line here, this is what will be read first by the program. So we're saying if the name of our function is equal to main, we're going to call main. And that's how we execute the program while still having it modularized like this with the reusable code. So if it's 2 underscores, which you get by, so in underscore you hold the shift key and the dash key down, hit that twice, type main, 2 more underscores, do single equals, double equals, and then double quotes, double underscore, main, double underscore, do a colon at the end, and then call the main function. And if we did everything right, this will work. So let's run it. Okay, so we have a problem. Main is not defined. Okay, if main equals underscore, let's check our notes. Here, equals. Doesn't like that for some reason. What if I copy and paste, maybe? So here's the problem. Sometimes our RDEs just don't like what we typed. If name, oh, that was the problem. Sorry, I typed main twice. So if name is equal to main, some of you may have noticed I did that, then we're going to call the main function. So we're going to enter a number. This can be any number of your choice. So we're going to try it with 16 first. So you can see it count by evens all the way up to 16, and now we should be count by odds. It looks like we got frozen. Why did we get frozen? Count by odds. Okay, let's go back and look at our math. It could just be an internet issue here. Print I? Oh, print num. No, print I. Okay, let's try that again. I want to enter 2, count by odd. Okay, let's go back and check our code. So this is debugging. This could be my internet connection. This could be the online IDE. But we're going to go back and check to make sure we followed all the steps correctly. So def count by evens num colon I equals 0. Print count by evens. Print count by evens equals num if I equals 0. Print I plus or equal to 1. Yep. Okay, now check odds. Well, I is less than or equal to num. Oh, I see. Okay, I see where my error is. This should be an I here and here, because the num is basically our top limit. We don't want it to, our num is the limit of our counting, and we're starting with 0, so that's what I did wrong there. And some of you may have seen that earlier. Okay, let's try that again. 16, there we go. Okay, so you see it goes 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, and then does the same for odds, 1 through 15, stops there. Now if we want to do an odd number, so let's say we did 5, and you see we counted to 5 here. So that's a pretty simple program. Sorry about the hiccups, but it's good for you guys to see how we debug this, and it's just going back and looking at your code. You won't always have the activity sheet, so I didn't quite see it at first. Eventually I probably would have figured it out, but the activity sheet does help speed us up, which is also why we give this to you, is to help you along with that. So at the bottom of this activity sheet, there's a few things you can try to challenge yourself. So you can add some functions to count by 3s or 4s, 5s, 6s, whatever. You can add a function to test if the original number is odd or even. So then you could change your main up a little bit. So if you had it test if it was odd or even, then you could make an if-then statement that says if number's even, then we call the count by evens function only. If it's not, then you call the count by odds function. That's one way you could do it, or you could test it all still. You could do the if-then statement to say original number is even or original number is odd. There's lots of things you could do with that one, but it's good to get that practice in. So another one you can do is we counted up. You could count by 0. So like I said here in our example, it goes 0, 2, 4, and then 1, 3. You could have it print 4, 2, 0, and then 3, 1. And then this one would be probably the most challenging, is what happens if you enter a negative number, and how would you handle that? And I kind of gave you a hint that you can use an if statement to handle negative numbers in your code. But those are really good to try. If you come with this activity done, we'll work on those. If you don't come with this activity done to the live session, we'll work on this activity. But we'll have some stuff to do, and I think the adventure modes would be fun to figure out together. They're a little bit more challenging, but you still have all the tools to figure them out at this time. So just a reminder, this activity sheet I'm using will be available on the website. Right here where this one says concert DJ activity sheet, it will say count by 2 activity sheet. The video will be up here, and then you register for the live session here. That is free. It will be on Thursday, July 2nd at 4 p.m. So this will all be updated at that time. But yeah, that's it for today. The Puzzle Club starts the week after that. I think that's going to be really exciting and fun. That's targeted right now for 5th through 8th graders, but high school students and younger students than that are welcome to join if they want to give it a try. And I hope to see people at the live sessions. Have a great day.